Hello and welcome to our Quality Data In and Data Out series. Today, we'll be discussing managing your commerce data in Listrak. In our last session, we reviewed how to manage contact data in Listrak to maximize the marketing potential for that data. If you missed it, feel free to head over to that video on demand and catch that before watching today's series, where we're going to be reviewing how to manage your commerce data in Listrak and maximize the marketing potential with that data. We'll be reviewing data export tools that can extract data from Listrak that has been collected from your marketing programs to import into any system that you'd like to be able to review that information and make it actionable. When we talk about commerce data with Listrak, I like to cover the different methods that you can use to actually send that data to Listrak. The first thing we like to discuss when reviewing commerce data in Listrak is how to actually get data to Listrak. The first method is through Listrak's API. The Listrak Data API offers all of the available data points necessary to power your marketing automations. As well, our FTP solution allows you to send data to Listrak in a file format where our FTP or an external FTP is available at any time to send all of the necessary data points to Listrak for your commerce data. In addition to API and FTP methods of transferring data to Listrak, we also offer on-site tracking solutions via scripts or integration modules that can be installed that track data in real time. To power your marketing automation in real time, we like to have as much information as quickly as possible, and on-site tracking can help us do that. Let's dig a bit deeper into these three areas. For file imports, Listrak supports external FTP sites, an external FTP that your team or perhaps a third-party team might be managing, or you can use Listrak's FTP option where we host an FTP site readily available for your team to use. As well, SFTP is supported to ensure an encrypted connection between your data source and Listrak as a destination. Listrak's data API options are utilized in two different ways. If you'd like to utilize our public data API to send over your commerce data to Listrak through any kind of custom programmatic solution you're using today, you can feel free to do so. As well, we've worked with several e-commerce platform providers, such as Shopify and Magento, that have data integrations with Listrak that use our data API to send over the same information. Similarly, on-site conversion tracking connects to all the same data points that our file imports and APIs do, except it tracks this data in real time as contacts are making purchases on your site. If you'd like more information about how to format your file imports with Listrak, set up data file setups in the Listrak user interface, or have other questions about our data points, I recommend going to our Help Center at help.listrak.com. As well, if you need specific or detailed information for utilizing any of Listrak's APIs, I recommend going to api.listrak.com. On that page, you'll see all of our available APIs, and for this case, I recommend checking out the Data API, which is used to transfer commerce data to Listrak. On our Help Center, there are guides for any of the scripts utilized by Listrak's on-site tracking solutions. Shopping cart abandonment, and in this case, conversion tracking. You can see example scripts and how to configure those scripts on our Help Center as well. Included in that is a guide on how to test those scripts in real time to verify that they're sending over accurate data when they should be. Now that we've covered the different methods to get data into Listrak, and you've reviewed our documentation and have a good understanding of how that data is formatted, those data points in any of those methods can be used to maximize your marketing potential with this data. Whether it's personalizing content for an SMS message or an email, these are possible and powered through certain data points that you're sending through commerce data. Particularly in automations, this data can be used to target specific contacts where their orders or retail data meets certain conditions. And of course, as we're collecting your product and order information as well as your customer information, we can use that data to send highly refined, tailored product recommendations to your customers. For our Listrak clients that are using the Magento or Shopify modules, there are also specific data mappings available where Shopify and Magento expose certain API data points through our module integration where we can grab those points and save them to specific columns and fields in Listrak. If you have further questions about possible data mapping options with Magento or Shopify, feel free to reach out to Listrak support or your account manager for more information there. Of course, these are just a small piece of what's personalizable, specific, and targetable through your commerce data. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at a couple examples. As a first example, let's take a look at sending data to Listrak via FTP. We'll walk through those user interface options and see what kind of requirements are necessary for those files and information that's good to have on hand as you set that up. To import files via FTP, or at least set up that file first, we're going to head to Solutions and then Data File Setup. On this page, you will see any existing data file definitions or configurations, I like to call them, ahead of time, if they have been set up ahead of time. Let's go ahead and set up a new one now. We're going to click New Data File. And what this does is, I like to call it a listener. You're going to set up some file definitions primarily based on the file name. And anytime a file is imported into Listrak's FTP that matches this file name that we give it here, Listrak will import that file and apply any settings or definitions that we apply through this process for this file. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and set up a product file import. Of course, a very critical piece to any set of commerce data. And this is a CSV. I think my file title is products. Now my team applies a date stamp on the end, so we actually have the option to use a wildcard character in this title name. So I'm going to do products dash and then wildcard, and any characters that are added onto the end, perhaps a date timestamp or other specific information on a per import basis, those can be covered with just clever use of a wildcard character. Of course, Listrak accepts .txt files and CSV files for product or any of our FTP imports. In this case, I'm going to use CSV. Our file type today that we're going to set up is a product file, whether it's customer file, order item file. We'll talk through those different files in a moment here. This is to give you a sense of what the user interface looks like as you set up FTP file imports with Listrak. So we're going to choose product. And we do have some column delimiters in my file. It's a CSV file, so it's going to be comma. And I also have commas in my product title descriptions. Now, I just know that because I manage my store here. So I want to make sure we apply some text qualifiers to our file. If there are going to be any commas or whatever you're using as a column delimiter, make sure you use text qualifiers as well so that when it imports, the column count won't be off kilter there. I'm going to use double quotes. I also want to mention this as we talk about product data. You have the option to either send us a full file or an incremental file. And these operate similarly, but a little different. When you send a full file to Listrak, Listrak will assume that any product not included in that product file should be marked as is purchasable equals false. That's a column Listrak offers for product data where if you don't want that product interacted with in any of your marketing automations, you can turn that product off. If it's perhaps a product last season that's been retired and will no longer be purchasable on site, that's a good example of a product that's not purchasable. So if that wasn't in our full product file, Listrak would mark that value false and it wouldn't appear in recommendations, shopping cart abandonment journeys, or anything like that. We also have the opportunity to do an incremental file update where you can specifically determine which products are purchasable. And the assumption with an incremental file is that we'll be receiving smaller files throughout the day with incremental updates for those products. Perhaps quantity on hand values, in-stock values, live sale values, things like that, that you might want to update incrementally. I'm going to go ahead and select a file. We can use this file as an example to set up the rest of the mappings or values. And again, this is true whether you're importing product data, customer data, orders, order items. You'll set up a few naming values, column and text qualifiers, give an example to Listrak, and from there, we can take a look at what columns are in your file and what columns can be mapped to Listrak. And there is a click and drag experience here just to visualize this. I'm going to empty one here. I have a SKU column in my file, and I want that to map to the SKU column in Listrak. So we can just drag that over. If you're importing orders, for example, there's an order number value and all kinds of order-related boxes that can be clicked and dragged over. Customer files as well, order item file. This user interface experience is going to be the same for any of the 4 file type setups. So again, you just take a look through the columns that are in your file and then map that up into the destination column. Now, of course, I recommend heading back to our help center, help.listrak.com, and reviewing the schema information for each file type. That'll tell you which exact columns are required for every single file import type. For example, products, you need to have the SKU. That's a required field. We'll want to make sure that that value is always mapped. And of course, for any of these files, once you have mapped all the columns that you'd like to, we can head to the preview section where we can see what this file is going to look like. I just set up some example data here just to visualize for us. It looks like the data that I expect to be in each of these columns is indeed present. Now, once I have perhaps my customer order or product file configured here and the preview looks good, at this point I can save the file. And now, anytime Listrak's FTP receives a file titled products dash and then anything after that in a .csv file format, Listrak will ingest that file as soon as it sees it. So for customers, orders, order items, or products, if you're sending those values to us via FTP in these files, this process is what you'll use to set that file up. And of course, if you're using multiple merchants, you'll always want to make sure you have the correct merchant selected here in the merchant dropdown. Now that we've gone over the user interface for importing these files, let's take a look at each of these different file types and see what Listrak might be expecting for your orders, order items, products, or customer data. When sending data to Listrak in a file format via FTP, there are 4 different file types that Listrak is expecting to have a full picture of your retail data. The first is orders. Order imports are critical. They include customer information, such as your customer number and customer email. They include the order number as a primary key, and any data in any of these columns will associate to that order number, as well as a host of other values to get a full picture of that order at the top level. So this is not going to include specific items in the receipt, but rather the kind of overall picture of the receipt, your shipping total, item total, order total, things like that. Now, to support that order value with specific line item information, Listrak expects an order item import. This will have a shared order number. We expect the order number value to be the same between the order file and the order item file. But the order item import will include specific SKU information and order information on a per SKU basis. So in this case, this order had 1 SKU purchased with a quantity of 4 and an item total of $50. To see specific definitions of each one of these columns, again, you can head to our Help Center. We have a schema page for all 4 of these different file types, and you can see what exact examples Listrak might be expecting to receive, such as date timestamps or things like that. While you're importing order and order item data, you'll also want to be importing customer data, of course. Customer data can connect to Listrak contact profile fields in some cases and power solutions in specific ways to maximize that personalization. This saves to a separate customer database to house all of your customer information and connect to those solutions in specific ways. Now, of course, once we have a full picture of your order and order item information, we've got your customer data coming over to Listrak on a regular basis. Of course, we need product data information as well. This is a core piece of your retail data, of course, as things like shopping cart abandonment, product recommendations, or anything where a product is highlighted or shown or interacted with in any way is often based right here on the product data import. There are several key values such as SKU, title, price, image, and link URL. Those are the required fields. There are plenty of other values to import as well. Things you'd expect to be in a product import, such as quantity on hand and an in-stock Boolean, on sale information with sale start and end dates, sale prices, color, style, size. So now that we have a picture of all 4 pieces of retail data that you're importing to Listrak on a regular basis, I do want to highlight the opportunity to include meta information. For all 4 of these file types, Listrak offers 5 meta fields that are flexible fields where you can import any piece of information that might be specific to your store or your program that you'd like to use in some way in one of Listrak's solutions. For example, if there is a loyalty tier that you want noted in your customer file, I quite often see that mapped as a value. Check out our last video on managing contact data, as there's a lot of other ways to manage contacts and specific programs like that. But if there is a flexible piece of information that might not be traditionally covered under our columns, check out our meta fields and see if you have enough fields available to import all of those pieces that you'd like. Your team may opt to be using Listrak's API instead of an FTP solution. In that case, you can use Listrak's data API to send over all of your retail data. The data API collapses many of the different pieces of information into one API request. The order API request actually has the customer object in it and all of the customer information that would generally be sorted in a customer file. Because it's utilizing API, we can add a lot of information into just one packet of JSON data. So for this order API request that I have set up here, we have customer information, all the information we need for this customer. As well, we have the individual order items in the same request. So in the same request, we can send the customer info, the order item info, the top level order information. And of course, this is all formatted in JSON. This request does not support adding product data to Listrak. However, of course, we do have an API request to send over all of the same values that you're sending in FTP files. You can send the same in an API request using our product request. So far, we've covered importing your commerce data to Listrak with FTP and all of those 4 key file types. As well, we covered using the API to send over that same information to Listrak. There's one additional piece that I always like to share, and that's our on-site conversion tracking. For our on-site conversion tracking, you actually capture a lot of the same information that our order files or our order API supports. This, however, captures in real time. You can actually, again, find this same example in our Help Center if you'd like to take a peek at any of our scripts used for on-site tracking. In this case, I pulled it in here to a file to take a look at some of these values and how it's formatted. For our Shopify customers, you might be familiar with some of these variables that are being called here, but I think it did a good job of visualizing what our conversion tracking looks like. It loads asynchronously, and in it are different lines to cover the key pieces of any order that we need to track. So setting the customer information, we include the email, first name and last name. Order number, of course, is a key piece. Item total, shipping total, tax total, order total, of course, is very important. And then for any item that's in that receipt, we have the ltk.order.addItem object, where you'll iterate that for as many items as there are in your cart. Once all of that information is iterated through, you submit it to Listrak, and then the order is captured in real time. Now, I'd be remiss to say that the JavaScript framework script, if you're familiar with Listrak's on-site integration, this is the most key script that you'll install. With this script, all other Listrak scripts can work. So I wanted to call that out here. If you'd like to test this or something on a test site, make sure that your framework script is also installed. And again, head to our Help Center for examples of any one of Listrak's tracking scripts. Now that we have on-site tracking, capturing your orders and data in real time, you have files being imported to Listrak, whether all of your retail data is in those files or supplemental pieces, or you're sending data over to Listrak via our data API. We like to see that actually work in the platform. So I set up an example journey that utilizes some of this data. I'm going to head to Automation and then Journeys. And then I'm going to choose Post-Purchase SMS, which I've just set up here. Now, my use case here is that I have VIP shoppers, and when they purchase an order at the VIP level, I want to note that to Listrak to specifically target those contacts when they order with a specific post-purchase message. So we found that the best way to do this is include a VIP text string in the meta3 column in the file I'm importing. So again, back to that FTP file I have configured for my orders. At the order level, I am sending in the VIP string in the meta3 column. So I have that data in Listrak now. Now I can use it here in this journey. So I've set up a post-purchase event for anybody that purchases. They're going to wait for a day, and then they're going to reach this order details split where we can actually look into the order details that you're sending over via API or files. And I'm going to choose order meta 3 because that's where I know I have that VIP string set up. And once a contact reaches this step, the associated order that got them into this post-purchase journey will be reviewed. And if that order meta 3 value is VIP, they're going to head to my specific SMS message perhaps with a follow-up coupon or thank you or some kind of specific messaging. From there, they're going to wait for 30 days, and then all of my purchasers are going to get a follow-up post-purchase message. But that's just an example of how Journeys is a great example to show how to reach into the data that you're sending to Listrak and actually use it. Product recommendations, shopping cart abandonment, browse abandonment are also great ways to see your data in action. Thank you again for coming and joining us as we reviewed how to manage your commerce data in Listrak. Last time we covered managing your contact data in Listrak and maximizing that potential in your automated campaigns and broadcast campaigns, content, things like that. Today, we reviewed how to import your commerce data that informs all of those other campaigns with products, orders, order items, and customers. Up next, we'll be covering Listrak's data export tools. Now that we have these campaigns running, content is personalized, it's automated, commerce data is reaching Listrak at regular intervals. We want to see how this is actually shaping up. Next time, we'll review those data export tools. And of course, if you'd like to see any of our other on-demand Listrak tips, go ahead and watch those videos. They're great resources to get the maximum potential out of Listrak. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day.